I am John, and I would like to present the work titled Automated Recognition of Geographical Named Entities in Titles of Ukiyo-e prints, which is collaborative work with Iva and Marita. First, let me explain the rationale for our research project. Japanese early modern woodblock prints, so-called Ukiyo-e or pictures of the floating world, produced between the 17th and mid-19th century, are one of the most widely recognizable visual images today. Among diverse topics depicted in these images, landscape prints remain the most popular, as evidenced by the iconic The Great Wave, designed by Katsushika Hokusai in the 1830s and its global career. However, the understanding of prints is still shaped by Western modern epistemologies that may not be well fitted for the analysis of pre-modern, non-Western artifacts. For example, the genre of landscape is a Western modern art category linked to the function of images as representations of certain places and topography. But this category is applied to the pre-modern objects such as this Hokusai print created in the 1830s, only after Japan started its modernization process in 1868. Therefore, to understand social function of pre-modern prints, there is a need to approach them from a different perspective that take as an analytical point of departure the objects themselves, their content, formal characteristics, and their historical context. The question is, however, how to do it considering that the corpus is extremely rich and diversified. Traditional analytical methods based on close reading or interpretation of individual images is not effective for this task. To develop a new classification of Japanese prints, this project approached the task by employing name entity recognition, an NLP technique used to detect name entities in texts. In principle, name entity recognition can be used to extract named locations from any text, including ones mentioned in the titles of Japanese prints. Any extracted locations then may allow for a digital geospatial exploration of the studied prints, which can shed light regarding the geographical distribution of the sites depicted within the prints, as well as regarding the frequency of the depiction of certain sites in relation to their production context. Time, location, designer. Hence, the combination of distant viewing or macroanalysis of visual materials and close reading of the artifacts has a potential to develop a more nuanced understanding of prints. So this paper investigates the application of natural language processing as a means to study the relationship between topography and its visual renderings in early modern Japanese landscape prints. And this is how we are going to proceed today. First, we introduce our corpus, that is a landscape prints dataset with inscriptions that have been annotated by an art historian for included place names, and then we describe our method and data. Finally, we present our experiments with the use of name entity recognition. The 19th century Japan saw the rise in popularity of prints depicting countryside. But despite their seemingly straightforward subject, that is landscape, the social function of these images is little understood as it is rooted in a different episteme. These images were in fact defined as meisho-e, pictures of famous places. The topography was not necessarily relevant as the concept of meisho derives from poetic rhetorical figures that tie seasonal images with particular places. For example, this print by Utaguwa Hiroshige from the woodblock print series, The 8 Views of Omi. The inscription in the square cartouche in the upper left corner features the poem. The long bridge at Seta, over which crosses the setting sun, passing far beyond the mountains, dripping with autumn dew. The image presents a view of the famous Seta Bridge in the southeast part of Lake Biwa with Mount Mikami in the background. Although Mount Mikami is not very high at only 432 meters, its form has been modified to liken it to Mount Fuji, which is 3,776 meters high. The image curates reality on at least one more level. Despite being produced at the peak of the famine, it shows an idyllic view of the countryside. Therefore, interpretation of these images requires understanding how they refer, depict, and distort topography. What places are depicted and what places are not featured in the images? How are these places distributed across Japan and in relation to socio-cultural, political, and economic contexts? And how their distribution changes in time and depending on the designer, publisher, and format. Considering the scope of the data and the nature of the inquiry, computational methods offer potential to assist our historical studies. The access to the data was facilitated by the database hosted at the Art Research Center at Ritsumeikan University, one of the leading digital humanities hubs in Japan and a collaborative partner of this project. The Art Research Center digital databases of Japanese printed culture hosts around 678 prints kept at 28 institutions in Japan and abroad. Our study investigated approximately 20,000 digitized prints featuring natural environments issued around 1800 and 1850s. From these 20,408 digitized prints, which arose from our search based on the keyword meso, famous place, and meso-e, that is, image of the famous place, we randomly selected 200 samples to annotate and use them as our training and testing benchmark data. An art historian, an expert in Japanese early modern history, annotated 2 sets of images, 100 images each, identified through random sampling. The annotation process was guided by 2 major principles. First, all places that were possible to be pinned on a map, meaning names of cities, temples, bridges, were annotated as geopolitical entities. Second, places that were less easily pinned on a map, roads, mountain ranges, were annotated as locations. We created a training set using 100 annotated instances, and we used the rest as an evaluation set. Dataset statistics and the most frequent genre types are also shown in the paper. We use SPACE's Japanese name entity recognition model, as is, without any calibration, and this has reported F1 72%. SPACE cannot detect most of the named locations that exist within the titles of Japanese Ukiyo-e prints when it is used out of the box. This means that if it is used for automated annotation, most of the place names in the data will be missed. However, error analysis revealed that named entities were detected correctly, but it is the assigned label that was mistaken. By using the small training set that we created, however, to fine-tune this pre-trained name entity recognition model, we registered improvements. As you can see, F1 was improved for both tags. For geopolitical entities, both precision and recall improved, while for other locations, precision fell, but recall improved far more, hence leading to 26% units increase in F1. Given that the reported performance is 72%, we know that there is room for improvement. Some concluding remarks. In this paper, we presented results of the first step of an analytical process aimed at the investigation of the relationship between topography and its visual renderings in early modern Japanese Ukiyo-e landscape prints. Due to the complexity of the question and research material at hand, we applied name entity recognition, a natural language processing technique to detect place names featured in the titles of prints hosted by the digital database from the Art Research Center at the Ritsumeikan University at Kyoto. We proposed an approach to generate label data to facilitate distance viewing or macroanalysis of visual datasets, and experimental evaluations indicated that name entity recognition performance can be improved by 30% and reach 50% precision by using part of a new dataset, introduced with this study to retrain the model. Therefore, we argue that distant viewing or macroanalysis of visual datasets can be facilitated, which is needed to assist art historical studies of this rich and diverse research material. By adding more data, as we plan to do in future work, we can develop an automated annotator of satisfying performance, which will be applied to assist realization of the overarching goals of our study presented today. Thank you very much for listening.